Thank you for joining us. Let me just introduce a few folks. I'm Clarkstown Supervisor George Homan. To my immediate left is our Rockland County Executive Ed Day, our Congressman Mondaire Jones, and they'll be speaking in a few moments. And we have Assemblyman Ken Zabrowski, who's been very helpful with this project as well. We have Councilman and Deputy Supervisor Frank Borelli, Councilman Don Franchino, Councilman Mike Graziano. We have Brendan Cahill representing our senator. We have our Highway Superintendent Bob Malone. We have Jane Storms, a local resident, who will also be speaking in a few moments, who will talk about the impact that this project will have and the catastrophic flooding that this area has suffered for the last 50 years. In addition to that, we have Megan from representing Senator Schumer, and we're grateful to Senator Schumer, who was also very helpful with the permitting. And we have Brian Heck representing Governor Cuomo's office. So I want to thank them all for being here. So I'm really glad that we have a wonderful day today. It's a little windy as our county executive is getting hit in the head here by the state flag. Kind of a metaphor.
That's surprising.
But the
this is the price I pay to get the site.
But the sun's really shining here, and the birds are chirping when you hear them over the din of the highway. But really, it's not a day like days that this neighborhood unfortunately has faced. This neighborhood has faced a lot of days where there's been catastrophic flooding. When the weather doesn't cooperate, when spring showers actually turn into a summer downpour or tropical storm, the scene around here is a lot different. And this lovely residential neighborhood is overwhelmed with water. We've got residents that have experienced 4, 6, and 8 feet of water in their basements, in their downstairs of their house. We'll hear from one of those residents later in this program who's lived through it and can better explain the nightmare that this and other families have had to endure over the years. This project will ensure that those kinds of events won't happen again here in the future. I want to thank our partners in Congress. Most especially, I want to thank Congressman Mondaire Jones for his exceptional efforts and advocacy. Congressman Jones has helped to secure the funding. He, along with Senator Schumer, helped to cut through the red tape to get us our Army Corps of Engineer permit, which had really been languishing for about 14 months. And Mondaire got into office, and between Mondaire and Senator Schumer, we had it within 6 weeks. So we're very grateful for all of his efforts, and you'll be hearing from him shortly. I also want to thank our county executive, their partners in the project, and I'll get into those details momentarily. And I want to thank Assemblyman Zabrowski. We had significant issues with the DEC. We had DEC permits that we had to obtain, and Kenny was able to get that done very quickly for us. Kenny's he's been my go-to guy for the town of Clarkstown since I've been supervisor, and prior to that he was extraordinarily helpful with the not-for-profit. So I want to thank Kenny for his advocacy as well. So these houses were built back here in the 1950s and early 1960s. Lake Lodoco was a man-made lake. That's what you're looking at behind us. It's actually named after a former councilman, John Lodoco. And these houses experienced catastrophic flooding shortly after they were built, and it continued. So the town's efforts were to create Lake Lodoco and put a levee in between Lake Lodoco, and behind that is the Hackensack River. And that has helped to ameliorate some of the flooding. Unfortunately, it hasn't worked entirely. And with the continuing growth within Rockland County, and with issues that have taken place with Lake DeForest, particularly with the shedding of water from Lake DeForest down the Hackensack River during storm events, the levee will be overcome, Lake Lodoco will overflow, and this entire area will become flooded. And so the project that we've embarked upon is really a project that's been in the making for over 30 years. And without the efforts of our congressman and without the efforts of the town and our county, we would not be able to address it. Thankfully, what we're doing today, and we'll be mobilizing shortly. In fact, it wasn't actually set up. You can actually see the first piece of equipment way over there that'll actually be on site, and they'll be starting work within the next week. The levee will be raised by 3 feet, So there'll be 2,238 feet. The levee will be raised by 3 feet. It will then be extended by almost 400 feet and will connect in back into the edge of the Hackensack behind the homes on Benson Avenue. Approximately 23,000 yards of fill will go into the levee that's been stockpiled from a previous project. In fact, an added benefit is the town stockpiled the soil about 10 years ago on the cloverleaf on Route 303. And I'm often asked by residents, when is that soil going to move out of there? Well, it's going to move out of there in the next couple of months. The total estimated time on this project is just under a year. The levee portion of it will be done in about 10 months, we believe, and will start shortly later in the month. There will be several wetland improvements, and there'll be a maintenance bench that will also be constructed with some additional plantings as well. An additional portion of the project, given that we're now creating a lot more flood storage here in the area, which will ensure that the Hackensack doesn't encroach encroach the levee and will move further down. Several miles downstream on Western Highway, as part of this project, the town will be replacing a bridge on Western Highway, which is a county road. So that's where the partnership with the county comes in. That portion of the project is just under $2 million. The county is contributing about 10% of it. The town will be bearing the rest with the federal funds. So the total project is $6.3 million, of which we have about 4.7 from just over 4.7 million courtesy of Congressman Jones from FEMA, as well as 1.3 that will be contributed from our town's capital projects and 200,000 from the county of Rockland. One last thing that's super important to emphasize with this project. This is a first step in what's going to take place here in West Nyack. We're working on several other flood remediation projects in West Nyack. When we're finished in about 3 years, we'll have expended, hopefully with federal and state funds and town funds, approximately $20 million in West Nyack for downtown revitalization, flood remediation that's taking place here, and flood remediation that'll be taking place later this year at our park across from the post office and next to the post office. It's a great project. I can't thank the residents for their patience enough. You've suffered a long time down here. Having grown up in West Nyack, my grandfather lived right at 22 Strawtown Road. As a kid, I would be here. I would fish in this pond when it was new. And I know I've seen firsthand the flooding as a young kid and also as supervisor and as councilman. And I'm so delighted that with the support of this town board, with our congressman, with our county executive, and our assemblymen, and the state of New York, that we are able to finally address this catastrophic flooding. And hopefully there'll never be days like we've seen with some of the photos that you see over at the edge. Those are photos from 2007 and 2010 or 11, where you'll actually see 4 and 5 feet of water in this neighborhood, where people were forced out of their homes and are paying exorbitant costs now because of flood insurance. When this is finished, again, thanks to Senator Schumer and Congressman Jones, the Army Corps of Engineers has already adjusted the flood maps. So the flood maps for this area, all these homes will be receiving a new flood map designation. So instead of paying $3,000 and $4,000 and $6,000 in flood insurance and more, as some people have in this area, their flood insurance costs will drop down to a manageable $1,000 or less per year. So it's a significant boon for the residents, and more importantly for the businesses and the homeowners here. Because when this area floods, it goes down Klein Avenue and it floods down into our downtown business area, and businesses have been wiped out. Hopefully we'll never have another day of that when this project is complete later this year. So with that, I want to turn it over to Congressman Jones, who will be followed by County Executive Ed Day.
Good morning, everyone. I'm excited to be here in West Nyack with my good friend, Clarkstown Supervisor George Homan, to break ground on the crucial Klein Avenue Levee Improvement Project. We all remember how storms like Irene, Lee, and Sandy caused the Hackensack River to overflow, devastating Rockland and in many cases plunging thousands of homes into darkness. The Klein Avenue levee will change that by raising and lengthening the levee to prevent future storms from causing such damage. I'm proud to say that this project is mostly funded with federal dollars, and my commitment to you as we seek to pass a transportation and infrastructure bill is that this is just the beginning. And know that we are just getting started for that reason. More help is on the way. As you know, President Biden is making infrastructure a top priority, and so are members of Congress like myself with this new majority. This is part of building back better and creating millions of jobs, by the way, in the process. Congress is already beginning conversations about what is going to go into that transportation and infrastructure bill. And I'm proud to say that transportation and infrastructure has enjoyed bipartisan support in this country, and that is how we should proceed. As the youngest member of the Democratic House leadership team, I am also making known the unique needs of Rockland County, and you can rest assured that so is Senator Schumer. I've already been having those conversations with him, our new majority leader in the Senate. Like the American Rescue Plan, which brought tens of millions of dollars to this district already, I should say hundreds of millions of dollars to this congressional district, $247 million to K-12 schools alone. To the Rockland County government, approximately $60 million. Across the river to Westchester, $187 million. You get the idea. We're bringing home critical resources. We pay so much money in taxes, and we should be getting back our fair share from the federal government. And I'm excited to lead that effort. I'm looking forward to working with my colleagues in government, from our town supervisor here to the county executive, Ed Day, to my friend, Assemblymember Ken Zabrowski, and to all of our town council members here, and our partners in the Senate and their representatives. And this will be the first of many celebrations, the first of many groundbreakings to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm very, very pleased to be here today, and I'm reminded of a saying that was coined by President Ronald Reagan, and it would strike fear into the heart of the average person. His phrase was, "We're from the government, we're here to help." That is not this. What this is all about is commitment. I remember back in the 90s when I was the head of a civic association in New City, hearing about the plight of the residents here through your own civic groups who were fighting to make sure something was done to alleviate the pain you were going through here. I remember Hurricane Floyd, I'm sure you do also, September 1999. A horrible storm that impacted, one of the many that impacted this community. The commitment you have here is unique and it's special because if you look up here, we have partners from every level of government who have joined together to do the right thing by you, which is what government should do, is do the right thing by the people. And the bottom line here is that you'll look along this line of people, each one has either an R or a D in front of their name as elected official. There are no R's, there are no D's when it comes down to helping the people of our county. That's the one thing I am very proud of. All of your elected officials put aside partisanship to work together. And it's a great mix we have here in Rockland. I'm pleased to see it come to fruition here in an area that needed the help so badly. So with that, again, I'm pleased to be here. I'm very proud to be part of this consortium of help that is coming your way. And again, my thanks to all for making this happen. Thank you.
We'll have Assemblyman Zabrowski just to say a few words.
Sure. Thank you, Supervisor. It's great to be here today. You know, West Nyack's a great hamlet to live in. I live about a mile up the road, but it's a wet hamlet. I'll tell you, a historic hamlet, but a wet hamlet. Even, you know, Christmas Eve this year, I was sucking water out of my basement out of a shop vac. But none of that compares to what the residents down here have dealt with. Years after years, I mean, many folks that are here with each impending hurricane or storm, just the dread that residents would fear here. And we would come afterwards and try to, many times coming by boat to look at residents' homes and all the damage and say that we're trying to do everything possible. You know, and many of this stuff dates back 50, 60, 70 years before we were so built up, when it maybe didn't matter as much as where you were siting homes and what the zoning was. But as things continued to build up, as the thruway would come in and different things, it created these infrastructure nightmares. And in order to fix that, it just takes such an incredible amount of money and such an incredible amount of engineering. And that's why it's important that we have partnerships from the town to the county to our federal government and across the state, because there is nothing more important to any New Yorker than having safety and security within their home and not having to check the weather report each and every storm. So thanks so much, Supervisor Holman. Thank you to Congressman Jones and Senator Schumer's office, to the governor's office. We work through various state agencies, through Homeland Security, to the DEC, and all my partners, County Executive A and the town board and the highway department. This is what we need to do. This is what government does, provide for people, and hopefully this is a start to a much brighter future for everybody here. Thank you.
And our final speaker is a resident, but I want to, before we get to Jane Storms, and I'm going to ask Jane to come on up. Before we get to her, I want to reiterate, interestingly enough, last summer, Mondale was running for Congress. He wasn't yet elected. And I was in Nyack surveying some of the damage. We had a horrendous, as you recall, storm that afflicted the town, afflicted the region. And Mondale stopped. He went out of his way and he stopped, and he spent about 45 minutes talking with an Altice technician, meeting with me, and kind of getting an appreciation of the damage. And certainly we're very fortunate to have Assemblyman Zabrowski and Congressman Jones, because they're real partners in government and they've been extraordinarily helpful to me. And I expect that you're going to see a lot more infrastructure projects hopefully coming through with some decent federal funding. So I just wanted to reiterate that and thank both of them and County Executive for their ongoing support of the Clarkstown residents. Mrs. Storms is going to speak, and she's aptly named for the press conference today. But she's fortunately she's off from school this week. She works in education, but then we want to thank her for that for her efforts there. But she's going to speak as a resident who's lived through multiple storms here, and what it's meant and what this project will mean to her and to all the other residents that are gathered around here. Mrs. Storms.
Thank you for having me. I have some notes, nothing fancy. And yes, the name is a great one. I've lived on Klein Avenue right around the corner here for 23 years. And my husband and I have experienced 3 floods. Our first one was Floyd. My daughter was 6 weeks old. My husband was trying to keep the basement dry, and he came up for supper, and after dinner we went down to 9 inches of water. We'd been in the house 2 years maybe, and that was our first introduction to this neighborhood in terms of flooding. When we took the walls down, though, the evidence of past floods, we found them. There was mildew and mold, and that was something else that over the years we've had to deal with. Our flood insurance, as Supervisor Holman mentioned, we're in the $3,000 range. I have neighbors in the $6,000 range, and we don't have a choice. If you have a lien on your home, you have to carry flood insurance. So that financial burden is going to be alleviated. I know that's going to be helpful for my family and many others, especially new families coming into the neighborhood. The flood zone status change is also going to help our property value. If many of us are getting that point of moving on, and when we sell our homes, to not have to worry that someone's going to say, well, I'm not going to buy in this area because of the flood zone status. So that's something that's going to impact us in the bottom line. The other thing that some people don't think about is a lot of us have lower levels that we don't finish. So our property value is actually reduced in terms of what we're able to use. My downstairs, my sister was living with us for a period of time with my niece, and the 2007 flood ended that. To come home in a boat and see my niece's crib floating in the water was a little unsettling. But then my sister couldn't live with us anymore. We didn't have the space upstairs, and the living space downstairs we had to redo in a way that we knew if another flood come, we could clean it up a lot faster. No more insulation and wood-based walls. We have steel framing and concrete floors. So that's something that it's nice to know that we can now plan and do something else in that space. But I think more importantly is something that Mr. Zabrowski just said. I think for me, the peace of mind that's going to come when we know that the water is not going to be at our door every nor'easter, every spring storm, every time we have a wet winter. I think you can't put a price tag on that. You can't put a price tag on knowing your family's going to be safe, or that your neighbors are going to be okay, or your elderly neighbor next door who doesn't have a place to go if it floods. One of our neighbors in 2007, she had to leave in a boat and she was pregnant. All of those things will be away from our minds and away from our fears, and we can enjoy our neighborhood, enjoy each other without that fear every time the weather gets crazy. So I thank you on behalf of my neighbors, many who I've met through all of this craziness. We've all held each other up as much as we can, helped each other clean up and work towards this. So I thank you from all of them. And here we go.
4, 3, 2, 1.